You pay money to see this person. In what other situation would you give someone money to make you feel bad about yourself?
I'd rather keep it real with ya.
Hey guys, it's me, Minu, back with another video. Um, I don't even really feel like talking about much today, but I want to give you guys some updates first, okay, before I launch into what I plan to talk about. The first update is Morticia and Sadie are playing with a box. Um, the first update is that make sure you guys are liking the videos, commenting on the videos, subscribing to the channel. I don't usually ask this, but for some reason, I don't know. And I know you guys probably heard about YouTube's new policy. Um, every video that I've uploaded over the past several months has gotten demonetized. Um, and usually I just have to fight it, right? I have fight it and then it gets undemonetized and we're good. But with YouTube's new policy, once they determine that your video like needs to be demonetized or isn't appropriate or whatever, you can't repeal it anymore. So they're taking away the option for me to go back and say, "Hey, I need you to manually review this because my video does meet your terms and conditions." So I no longer have the option to do that. So if every video that I upload gets demonetized and I'm no longer able to fight that, then I'm not. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't really making much money from this. Um, pennies on a dollar, really. But I don't know what it's going to take for them to not demonetize every single one of my videos, especially because, I have a variety of different videos. So it's not like I upload a very specific type of content that would make them be like, "Ooh, we need to demonetize everything because it all violates this one thing." Like I upload a variety of videos, a variety of content, and every single one gets demonetized without fail. People are saying that it's because of profanity or violence or anything like that, but I don't have violence. I rarely curse. So there's really no excuse as to why I get demonetized. So for those of you who want to support me, I always keep my coffee link down there. I always keep the Discord link down there. I'm super happy about all the people joining Discord and we're having great discussions there. Um, but yeah, just make sure like you're interacting with the videos and showing that this is appropriate content for people to watch. I don't know what they think is wrong with my videos, honestly. It gets demonetized like so fast before the video even uploads or like is visible to people, is demonetized. um so that's very upsetting, but like I always say, these videos are about me talking with you guys. The little pennies on the dollar is helpful. It feels like, I did a little something, but it is what it is. um Also, if anyone's been wondering what happened to all the working with white people videos, I have a lot more videos that I plan to upload, and I would really hate for them to go to waste. But right now I'm just in a situation where I cannot have anything relating to my job posted publicly for people to see. I'm not going to go into all of the reasons why, but I just can't post anything relating to my work for a while. So I don't know if those videos will ever be available, if they'll be available in some kind of private monetized content for people to just, catch up on what in the world's been happening with me in the background. Um, any videos that even reference, not just the working white people videos, but any videos that even reference my job at all, I'm just like, gotta get it going. um, so yeah, that. Oh, also new hair. Tried to do a little something with a little bun up here. Just not have it like all over my head. Look how long it is. Not have it like all over my head, but she just wanted to show some length. Also, if my face looks fatter, I don't think it does. But if it does, I just went on a trip and I ate so much gluten-free food. I was so happy. So anyway, what I decided I was going to talk about today, I had several things planned, but what I decided I was going to talk about, I was going to talk about therapy again. I've been having this conversation a lot over the past few weeks with multiple people. I've been on the CPTSD subreddit, and it's really unnerving how many people on that subreddit are like, oh, can you see my shirt? How many people on that subreddit have like therapy trauma or have um had their therapist, their trauma informed therapist, like just really like traumatize them, invalidate them, bully them. Like it's very frustrating. And I hate when I'm like on there and I see people talking about, yeah, never open up to a therapist, never go see a therapist, blah 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 blah. And like some of these people legit have like, not to say CPTSD isn't a real issue, but they have other issues that make them harmful to others. I say it like that. There are people on there who have literally like taken on the traits of their, hello Sadie, taken on the traits of their abusers. So they're like abusing their partners, or they have a accompanying personality disorder. They have these skewed schemas about the world of like why it's okay for them to hurt people, because everybody else hurts them. Like those people really need to be in therapy to help with their issues, because I've been seeing a lot of people who are just like accepting these parts about themselves that are genuinely hurting the people that care about them, and then just being like, well, I have CPTSD, so whatever, like this is just what I have because I have CPTSD. So yeah, I hurt people, yeah, I lie, yeah, I steal from them, yeah, I commit crimes, like, so stuff like that. And I just be like, bruh. And I just be like, you need to see a therapist. And some of them will either have a therapist and their therapist is apparently cool with everything they do, which I don't believe that, or a lot of them won't have a therapist. And the general consensus in these communities is therapy is bad. Don't go to a therapist. They're going to invalidate you. They're going to re traumatize you. They'll say that they're a trauma informed therapist, but then when you start talking about your trauma, they'll be like, your trauma wasn't that bad, or I have trauma and it's worse. Um, I've also heard a lot of stories because I have a friend who's been like, um, trying to get a therapist, and I've been like talking with her about it and like trying to like encourage her to do it, and she's gone through several therapists who have ghosted her or been extremely unprofessional. And I did see some videos about BetterHelp and how um people, there was a TikTok thing going around where people were talking about how traumatizing it was with these BetterHelp therapists. I've been hearing a lot about the remote therapists who either don't show up, or when they do show up, they seem disinterested in you. They're doing inappropriate things like using the bathroom while on the call, or they don't understand what CPTSD even is. They don't believe you. You tell them about a difficult relationship, they invalidate you, they side with the other person. Like all of this stuff I've been hearing, and I know you guys probably have your own stories that you can share in the comments or you can share in the Discord. Sadie, stop chewing my blanket. No, stop it. Put them teeth back in your mouth. No, Sadie. Stop chewing my blanket. Don't. No. Sadie be thinking she's slick. She be doing this thing where she's like, I'm just going to lick my paw on the blanket. And if I so happen to, lick the blanket and then chew the blanket. And I'm just like, I know exactly what the fuck you doing. Stop. There's so many stories of these terrible therapists giving people what I consider to be therapy trauma, which makes them never want to try therapy again. And it's so upsetting because therapy has been so good for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I've been in therapy most of my life. I was in therapy when I was a child. After my mom left my dad, we were in therapy for like families escaping domestic violence or something like that. I don't exactly know what the program was called, but it was something like that, because my father was very, very, and so it was like, whole family needs to go to therapy. This was a horrible experience. I was in therapy when I was a young child. Got out of therapy for several years. When I was in high school, I started going back to therapy of my own volition because I was like, I need help and y'all is not helping me. And I've went through a number of therapists, good and bad, and psychologists and psychiatrists, good, bad, terrible. Like I've been through all of them. And I still believe in therapy because it only takes one good therapist to turn everything around. So I understand the frustration with people who maybe their parents put them in therapy. So then the parent talked to the therapist, and then you tell the therapist your secrets, and then the therapist go tell the parent the secrets, and yada yada yada. Now you don't trust therapists no more. Um, or the people who will say that they have, I'm just gonna call it ideation, and it's passive ideation, and they tell the therapist that they have passive ideation, and then the therapist reports them because they're like, oh, they have an ideation. um I had a situation like that actually when I was in college. I was seeing a black woman therapist. Yeah, I know my preferences. I was seeing a black woman therapist, and she was gone for some reason, and I was talking to a white woman therapist, and I had told her that I just had a violent dream, basically. Like, I was just sharing, like, oh, it's just a weird dream I had. And she reported it, and when I saw the black therapist the next time, she was like, now, why you tell that woman that? And I was like, what? And she was like, girl, she was all like, she's having ideation and thoughts and blah, 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 blah. I was like, I had a dream. I have no control over my dreams. And she was, and the black therapist was like, yeah, I know you don't have any control over your dreams. But then she got all, excited and upset, like you was in danger or something. Like, I was like, oh my God, this. So you got to be careful with people you talk to. It's not always like, and like I said, I do prefer having white women therapists, but not all white women therapists are good at their job or good at differentiating between passive ideation, active ideation, um, a nightmare versus I'm gonna hurt people. Like, what in the world? Like, I don't understand. And not only like it has my current therapist been amazing, but I've also met there people who have interned with my current therapist who have become therapists themselves and are practicing themselves, who are also amazing. And one thing my therapist did, I don't know if I shared this in a video before, but my therapist has trained other therapists. And one of the biggest things my therapist focuses on when she's training other therapists is conveying to them how easily they can mess everything up. See, I'm trying to keep the profanity. You know what I want is I'm trying to keep the profanity out. I don't want to get demonetized. Watch, I still get demonetized. But how easily they can mess everything up because they say one little thing that's wrong. Because it only takes one thing. It only takes one word or one sentence to cause your client to completely shut down. I've shut down on my current therapist. She's watched it happen. She knew it was going to happen. She had to say it anyway. Then she watched it happen. And then we had to have a conversation about it later. Like, it's literally so, so easy, especially when you're dealing with people with trauma. It's so, so easy to say the wrong thing, that to you might have been like, oh, this is normal. And then you say that. And then now this person has been re traumatized or invalidated. You know, something I do with my best friend is I try to do like cognitive restructuring. So she has a lot of anxiety. She immediately goes to the worst case scenario. And then so do I. I don't know what I'm doing. Um, but I try to do cognitive restructuring. So for example, she'll say something like, so and so didn't like the color of my dress. They think I'm ugly, like it just goes. And then I'll be like, okay, and I call it out too because I want to make sure they understand I'm not invalidating them. I'll be like, cognitive restructuring, that dress is not their favorite color dress. They wouldn't wear it, but it looks cute on you. And if you like it, that's all that matters because you do look cute. They just wouldn't wear it. But what looks cute on them won't look cute on you. It's different. So I try to like do it like that so that they know I'm not invalidating the fact that they felt bad. And there's a lot of therapists who like to do cognitive restructuring. I had a therapist who did it with me before. And if they don't do it properly, it comes across as invalidating. So if someone says something, and again, remember, I'm doing this with my friend over like minor anxiety things, not huge traumas, like minor anxiety things. Cognitive restructuring can work. So if you're opening up about a trauma, say like something your parent did, and the therapist tries to cognitive restructure, that's not going to go well. One is going to be invalidating. Two is going to make them not want to trust you anymore. Um, Three is not what you should do in that situation because a lot of times when someone's opening up about a trauma, the first thing you should do is validate them. validate them. So I know it sounds like I'm talking to therapists, but I'm saying this because I've learned so much from my therapist and from working with my friends who have, you know, have had their own experiences with therapists, that I want you guys to understand, like, therapists are people too, and they can make mistakes. But the problem is, one, you're paying them. But the problem is that mistake that they make is going to hold so much more weight than in any other situation. And what I find, I can accept or appreciate a therapist who knows that they don't know everything, that they can be wrong about things, that they may have to change their mind about things. If you have a therapist who is so sure of themselves that they can't accept that they did something wrong or that they were wrong about something, they're not a good therapist. That's when I would say they are not a good therapist. Because even my therapist, as amazing as she is, still goes and does continuing education, still learns new type of therapy methods that might work. You know what I mean? And she came to me one time, and was like, I want to try attachment therapy with you. And I was like, ooh, I've heard about that. And so it's like, if you have a therapist who's like, I'm great at everything and you can't tell me nothing, that's a problem. And my friend literally had a therapist who spent a good chunk of their therapy session telling my friend about how great of a therapist she was and how amazing she was at her job and how she just knew that she was an amazing therapist. I have never had a therapist who was a good therapist sit and tell me how amazing they are. It's always me telling them how amazing they are. They never had to tell me they were good at anything. Like, so when you have a therapist who thinks like that, that's an automatic red flag and get out of there. And I'm going to go into more examples, but I'm telling you guys this because you pay them. You pay them. If you feel like you don't want to go to your therapist, you don't want to go to therapy, you don't feel good about it, don't go. Don't go. You pay money to see this person. In what other situation would you give someone money to make you feel bad about yourself? You would give someone money for an hour to make you feel uncomfortable, unloved, unwelcomed, invalidated. In what other situation would you do that? No other situation. Like, these people charge 150 to 300, in some areas $1,000. Why would you pay them to make you feel bad? My therapist, as amazing as she is, when things get difficult in therapy, she's had patients not come back the next week. She's had clients be like, I don't really want to talk about that thing that you touched on in the last therapy session, so I'm not coming back. And that happens, and that's okay. It's normal for people to get triggered and want to run away when you're talking about trauma. But if you don't want to go, don't go. Now, if you've entered something like EMDR and you know that that's going to be stressful, then I would tell you, like, okay, this is something you really want to commit to. You don't want to just walk away, you know, a quarter into your EMDR session. But it's still up to you. You choose if you want to see that person. And it just boggles my mind that some people will continue to see a therapist that does not serve them or that does not make them feel good because you're paying them money. And if your therapist spends the whole time talking about themselves, you need to leave because you're paying. Why would I pay you to tell me about you? I can't tell you how many times I've had this realization because I used to go into therapy and talk about my family for years. I would go into therapy, I would talk about everybody in my family who had something wrong with them and how I could help them be better or help them accomplish their mental health goals. And I had one moment one day before I cut my family off, and I was like, I've spent hundreds, or I've spent thousands at this point, thousands of dollars going to therapy for everybody else in my life. I've spent thousands of dollars going to therapy trying to figure out how to help the people in my life who won't get help. I'm literally wasting money because I'm talking about them and I'm not talking about me. And I made a commitment to myself that therapy would be about me. Now, I would love to sit up there and kiki with my therapist. She real cool. I love to know what she do in her free time and what's your relationship like with your family and boo 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 boo. But I got to talk about me first. Now, if we get to the point where we run out of things to talk about, I'm gonna be like, so tell me about how your weekend went. But if I still got stuff to talk about, we gotta talk about my stuff. I come to therapy My friend told me, she said, "You a special type of person." I come to therapy with an agenda. I come to therapy with bullet points of things that I need to update my therapist on and things that I need her to tell me about myself. Why did I do this? Why did I react this way? That's literally what I do. I do homework for therapy. I love homework. I do homework for therapy. And then I come in and I was like, yes, I read chapter 1 and 2 of that book. And tell me about this is this. Like, I make sure that I am using therapy for me. There's so much stuff that's been going on in my friends' lives that I would love to update my therapist about, because I don't like telling other people about my other friends' drama. But if it's a therapist, it's okay. And I love to update my therapist about who broke up with who or who's having this happen to them. But it's not their session, it's my session. And I think her name's Missy Atkins. She's a therapist on YouTube, and she has a video about like why you should boss around your therapist. You decide what you do when you come into therapy. You decide what you talk about when you come into therapy, what you want to work on when you come into therapy. If you come into therapy and you say, I really want to work on my relationship with my mom, and your therapist says, I think we should work on your relationship with your dad. But what did I say? Because I said mom. I don't know where you got dad from. Oh, yeah, sure, we got issues, but I want to work on mom. And then they go, no, we're going to work on your dad. And I go, no, you're not going to get paid. Goodbye. I'm not coming back. You don't tell me what I'm going to work on in my therapy session that I pay for. Now, if the therapist was paying me, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm making money. But you was not about to sit up here and get paid to make me feel like I can't say what I want to say and I can't talk about things I want to talk about. I could come in one day and say I want to talk about my mom, and then I can come in the next day and say I want to talk about my sister. You should feel okay in doing that. You should feel comfortable doing that. And I know it's hard because a lot of us, we people pleasers. A lot of us, we have situations where, people freak out on us if we say no or have boundaries and all that stuff. And I get it. I really do. Trust me. I understand very much. Um, but you have to understand the power is in your hands as the client because you are paying the bill. At the end of that session, they are going to charge you money. And that money did not come cheap. You had to go put some blood, sweat, and tears working for somebody else to get that money. So you don't waste your money. If I pay $150 a session for therapy, I could have spent that money on some clothes, going out to eat, putting it towards a travel fund. You could do a lot of things with that money. You are intentionally choosing to spend your money on therapy. So you need to intentionally choose the type of therapy that you're going to do. If your therapist only does cognitive behavioral therapy and you need EMDR, then you need to go get an EMDR therapist. It's no hard feelings, Marissa, but I need to go talk to Heather because she does EMDR. You know, see on my microphone, please. So that's another thing. So I don't even know where my bullet points are because again, like I don't write this stuff down. But so some talking about some just going through and just catching you up, like I have to do sometimes, catch myself up. Red flags in the therapist. One, they're super assured of themselves. They're super self assured. They think they're great and they want you to know that they think they're great. No. Two, they spend a lot of time talking about themselves. No. Three, they invalidate you in any way. I don't care. I don't care. They invalidate you in any way. They not good. They're not a good therapist. It's not their job to invalidate you. It's their job to support you. Um, I've talked about this with my friends before. There are some therapists that I follow online, and they even talk about like they give advice to other therapists. Like therapists will write in and be like, my client is abusive, and I want to tell them they're abusive so that they can stop abusing. And how do I do that? And one of the things he talks about is like you don't do that. Like if you want to actually help your client and help them not be abusive anymore, then you can't just say your abuse will stop or you're wrong in the relationship because they're going to leave. You're going to still want to validate them. You're going to still want to take their word for it, believe them as they say, and then work purely off the things that they are telling you. Let them know that you're a safe person to come to, that they can trust you. And when you've established that trust, you can suggest here and there, do some cognitive restructuring, and get them to understand that what they were doing was not the best thing to do in that moment. You're not supposed to be aggressive as a therapist. And here's another thing that I talked about in my other therapy videos, the different styles of therapy. Some people benefit from having an aggressive tell it like it is therapist. My therapist is a mix. Sometimes she be like, you know what I mean? Sometimes I'll be like talking about something and she'll be like, as if you didn't already know that. And I'd be like, oh, well, I did. you know, but some people don't like that. Some people don't like a therapist who's going to be like, he's stupid. Don't talk to him no more. Some people don't like that. Some people want a therapist that's going to talk to them in a soft voice and that's going to be extremely validating and be all like, you're so brave for even coming here today. Like, if that's what you want, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want, that's what you get. Don't go to a therapist who's going to be like, I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm not going to spare your feelings, but you a sensitive person who wants your feelings to be spared. That's not a good match for you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad therapist. It just means that their style is not for you. And you have to think about these things. Like I was just telling somebody, I was giving them my laundry list of things that I look for when I'm looking for a therapist. Like I'm very, very picky. It looks like a my list for looking for a therapist is like more picky than my list of looking for like a friend or a partner. You know what I mean? Like I'm so picky with therapists because I don't want to waste my time. I don't. If you're not meeting the criteria, I'm not even calling your office. If I sit in there for that consultation and you say some wild off the wall stuff, I'm not coming back. They're gonna be like, do you want to schedule your next appointment? No. I didn't like the way you came at me just then. And they can react however they want to, honestly. Um, Other red flags in a therapist, if you're scared of them, like, if you are scared to tell your therapist stuff, if you're scared to tell them that you messed up, if you're scared to tell them that, yes, so they you told me not to do that thing and I went and I did that thing. If you're scared to say that, that's a problem. And you can either address it with them and let them know that you're scared to say it, or you can just not come back. I'm so serious about this. Like, I walk away from a therapist before I walk away from a job. And I've walked away from some jobs. You know what I mean? Because the job pays you. But anyway, like if you're scared to tell them things, they're not the therapist for you. Whatever happened, at some point they broke your trust and they've set themselves up as someone who is not safe for you to be open and vulnerable with. So at that point, you're wasting your time. If you feel like there's only a certain amount of things you can talk about with your therapist and you can't talk about everything else, you're wasting your time. And I didn't realize that until I got with my current therapist, how she made me feel so validated. Like I would tell my therapist like messed up stuff that I was like super ashamed of, that I was like, I would never say anything about this. And my therapist would be like, that makes perfect sense. And I'd be like, what you mean it makes perfect sense? And she'll be like, well, this happened. You have this type of relationship. And then this thing happened. And now you act like this. It makes perfect sense. It's very logical. And I'd be like, yeah, it is logical. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times when you're like ashamed of stuff or you don't want to talk about stuff, you get in your head and you think nobody will ever understand me if I open up about this. Nobody will ever believe me if I said something like this. But then you get a therapist who's like, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. That those things would happen. That's totally valid. That's the therapist you want. You get a therapist who, here's some other red flags that I've heard about from therapists who fall asleep on you during the session. Literally, I've heard that happen. Therapists who cry when you tell them your trauma. Some people want to see people react that way. I don't. I hate it when people cry when I'm telling them about my trauma. I do not want my therapist to cry. Man, my therapist is not a crier anyway. But I would hate to be telling my therapist about my trauma and then they be crying, because that just makes me feel so much worse. Like if a therapist can't handle what I'm talking about, I'm beyond help. That's how I would feel. So I've heard stuff like that. Therapists who get an attitude or get indignant at something you're complaining about. I don't care how minor it is. I don't care if I came into therapy and said, you know, my dad picked me up from work and took me out to eat and I can't stand him. I'm so sick of him doing stuff like this. don't care if I said something like that. I bet not hear that therapist say nothing about what you mad for. He just doing his best. He just trying to help you. I ain't trying to hear all that. I said, I'm sick of him and I'm sick of him doing stuff like this. Only thing need to come out of the therapist's mouth is tell me more. I understand why you may feel that way. Or could you give me more insight into how you were feeling in that moment? Like when a therapist catches an attitude with you, it's time to go. If your therapist makes you feel like they don't like you, like some people therapists are legit told them that they don't like them. I've read some posts of people saying that their therapist has told them that it's too much dealing with them and their trauma. It's they that they're too tired to talk to them. That they don't want to see them again for another month or so because they just can't deal with them. Making them feel like they're a burden and they're paying you. Making them feel like they're a burden for telling you about their trauma and their issues is a huge red flag. I wouldn't even want that therapist to practice no more. You know what I mean? But it's stuff like that people go through. And I'm just like, these therapists should not have clients. Like these therapists should be getting reported for stuff like this. You know what I mean? Um, you should never feel like you're a burden to your therapist. You should never feel scared of them. You should never feel like you're going to get attitude when you bring up something that genuinely upset you. It don't matter what the therapist secretly think in the back of their mind. It don't matter. They can't treat you that way. You pay them. And I understand that some people be like, but they're the expert. That's why I came to them. Yes, they should be an expert and they should be trained on how to help you through your issue. If they are not trained to help you through your issue the way you need to be helped, then you need to move on. You know, I had a psychiatrist and I've heard that psychiatrists tend to be more cold than nurse practitioners. Because my psychiatrist is a nurse practitioner and he's really, really, really sweet. But, I've had a psychiatrist that I would go to who would prescribe me medication that affected me physically and mentally, and not want to talk about whether or not the meds were working. All they wanted to do was weigh me every time I came to see them to see if I was gaining weight. Do you understand how triggering that was for someone like me? And when I tried to tell them about stuff that I was going through, they didn't want to hear it. They just wanted to weigh me and then refill the prescription. That was an awful person. That was an awful person. And I knew somebody else who went to that person, and they went to them years after I went to them, and they were having a horrible time because of how that person made them feel like a burden and that they didn't want to actually talk to them. They just wanted to give them medication. You shouldn't have to feel like you're bothering your therapist because you are paying specifically for that hour to talk about whatever the fuck you want to talk about. Like, my therapist gave me homework 2 weeks ago. I've come in twice now and said I didn't do it. Really hard for me. I hate that. But my brain has been like, I don't want to deal with this right now. So when I come in and I'm just like, I didn't do it, she's like, that's okay. It's totally fine. We can talk about what else is going on right now. Like, she never gets mad. She never is like, why didn't you do XYZ? The only time my therapist has come for me was like when I missed a group therapy session. And then she was like, why did you cancel group? And I'd be like, I knew you go say something. And then she like convinces me to do it anyway. But she does it in a way that I don't feel like super pressured. Just more of like, I'm going to support you. I'm going to be there for you in that moment when you're being vulnerable. I have your back. So I don't want you to feel like you can't come because of this, because I'm going to be there and I'm going to be there to support you. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll go. But if you don't want to do something and your therapist is like, you better go or you have to go, I don't got to do a damn thing. I paid money to come here. And if I don't want to pay money to come here, like I had told my therapist one time, I didn't go because I ain't had the funds. And she'd be like, I figured that's why. You know what I mean? But it was like, these are examples. I tell you guys about my therapist because seeing her for the past few years, 2 years, 3 years, I don't even know at this point. I've made more progress in my life than I've ever made with any other therapist I've seen. And I've been in therapy almost my entire life. And I know what it's like to go to a therapist and you're scared that they can't be trusted with your deepest, darkest. I know what it's like to feel like that. I know what it's like to go to a therapist and be made to feel like you're a burden, or be made to feel like, they may not really like you that much. And then you feel uncomfortable, or to feel like you are obligated to come and talk about whatever they want to talk about with you. And that's just not okay. And I don't think it's okay for these therapists to be getting away with treating people this way and still be out here making, um could easily be making six figures a year. You know what I mean? These people can make six figures off treating their clients like crap. YouTube, please don't demonetize me. And that's just not okay. And I've never had a therapist be so terrible that I felt like I needed to go like write a review or report them or anything. I did tell everybody who I possibly could that my psychiatrist, that one I just mentioned earlier, was terrible and that no one should go see her. Um, but I've never been in a situation where I've been like, this person really needs to be reported, because I literally legitimately just leave. I just leave and I don't go back. And if people ask me why I don't go back, I tell them exactly why I didn't go back. Um, but there are some of these therapists where I feel like they should. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, guys. Like I always say, eat your food, drink your drinks. I mean, water, drink water. Um, take your naps, snuggle your cat. Sadie's on my lap. Morticia's back here doing whatever. Oh, no, her. Morticia's back here doing whatever. There she is. Hold on. Let me point. Let me try to point. I can't do it right. Okay, here we go. There's Morticia. um, but just take care of yourselves because you deserve it, and no one's gonna do it for you, unfortunately. um like I said, if you want to support me, as this video is most likely going to be demonetized, you can support me on Coffee. Just go throw a few dollars my way. Any amount is more than I made from any single video. Honestly. And join the Discord. Also gonna have my Instagram down there. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, I am posting pictures of gluten-free food and pictures of my cats. It's not a specific type of page. It's really just whatever I feel like posting. So if you down with keeping up with that, then also follow me on Instagram. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.